The events in the gaming industry today are being referred to as Gamergate 2. Now, while I think that people are vaguely familiar with the events of Gamergate 1, I don't think they realized just how similar things are today. Some of the same companies, same people, and even the same tactics are being used today as were being used in the original Gamergate. To understand what is occurring today, I think it's actually necessary to understand the events of the original Gamergate so you can see just how pernicious things really are. Now, due to the amount of information to go over, it's very hard to put everything together in a concise manner, but I did try to do my best to do so. We have a decade of information to go over that goes all the way from just you playing video games at home, all the way up to the federal government. Some of this even culminated in people like Elon Musk noticing what is occurring today. You will see that many of the people involved in gaming and gaming journalism are a part of a clique where things like sex is exchanged or money is exchanged, and you'll be attacked if you even just question their ethics. They also use extortion tactics to get the things that they want. Keep in mind, these are people that never cared about games. It's all about personal gain and pushing the message. The issue is always the revolution. Before the video begins, this video was a huge pain in the ass to put together and took like 2 months to make. Hopefully it isn't too schizophrenic. I tried to include all of the relevant information and sources, and of course more information kept coming out as I was making the video, so consider checking out my locals if you do wish to support me further. Subscribe if you want to see more. Leave a like if you do like the video, it does help the channel grow a ton, and comment down below letting me know what other types of videos you want to see from me in the future. This video will likely ruffle some feathers, but let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Now, in order to understand Gamergate 2, you kind of have to understand Gamergate 1 because they're very, very similar. So similar in fact that there's a lot of not only the same tactics being used, but even a lot of the same people involved. Now this just goes to show you how pernicious some of this stuff can truly, truly be, because the original Gamergate happened basically a decade ago. Again, it's very important to understand what happened a decade ago, so that way you can better understand what is happening today. So originally, Gamergate popped off because a girl by the name of Zoe Quinn, an indie game developer, was cheating on her boyfriend. Now, Zoe actually cheated on her boyfriend with something like 100 guys, but there's really about 5 primary people that she cheated on him with who were all involved in the game journalism space. Now, of course, Zoe was cheating on her boyfriend with these 5 guys, the most important of which is this guy, Nathan Grayson. Now, Nathan Grayson is a gaming journalist. They had a professional relationship, and the other guys had professional relationships with Zoe as well that were undisclosed while she was sleeping with them. Now, the reason that Nathan Grayson is so important is that he was reporting on a game jam that Zoe Quinn was a part of, but he was reporting on it while they were sleeping together, and of course they were not disclosing that they were having this relationship. Essentially, it seems like Zoe kind of intentionally sabotaged this particular game jam, and you know, she was a part of it. Nathan Grayson was reporting on it. He reported on the downfall while sleeping with Zoe. Never mentioned that. And the person who put on the game jam lost a lot of money. And the reason Zoe sabotaged it, allegedly sabotaged it, was because, well, she was going to host her own. And she wanted her own to succeed, so she wanted others to fail. It was a way to get rid of competition. Now, another thing that caused this to sort of blow up is that the YouTuber known as Mundane Matt, he made a video on the Zoe post.
Hey everybody, my name is Mundane Matt, and you know, it's always fun to talk about video games.
Now, he at the time was not a large channel, something like 5,000 subscribers, but Zoe filed a false DMCA strike on his channel to try to get the video removed, and because he was being treated unfairly, people rallied behind him, and he gained like 100,000 subscribers in a very short time, which caused it to blow up, sort of a Streisand effect. Now, because of the way this guy was being treated, other YouTubers such as Mr. Medicare, who was known as the internet aristocrat at the time, now he's Mr. Medicare, made videos on it. Sargon of Akkad made videos on it.
That copyright claim was filed by Zoe Quinn, the person who is the subject of the video itself.
And of course, again, it continued to kind of gain traction. And the main complaint that people had was that there was no integrity in the gaming journalism space. Many of these people had very serious relationships with each other that they were not disclosing. And like anyone who's friendly, you're gonna do things that benefit your friends, and you're gonna do things that hurt your enemies. And that's exactly what a lot of these people in these gaming journalist space were doing. But the problem is they weren't disclosing it, so you didn't know that they had these biases to begin with. They were acting like they were neutral parties, when in fact they were heavily favoring one or two particular individuals. Because of this, people started to do a lot more digging into these relationships. And what they found out is that, well, Zoe was directly benefiting from a lot of these people. Either she was sleeping with them and they were giving her positive reviews, or they were doing things like directly subscribing to her Patreon. None of this was being disclosed. And as a result, people quickly started to realize that there was zero integrity in gaming journalism. And what's worse is it was sort of a clique that if you were in, you were rewarded with everything you needed to be successful. But if you were on the outside looking in, there was nothing you could do about it. It was really extremely deep. And as a result of this clique, the gaming journalists weren't reporting on the negative coverage of Zoe Quinn because, well, they were friends with her. If you look at Ben Kuchera, he was the editor at Polygon, one of the largest gaming magazines out there, and he was directly subscribed to Zoe Quinn on Patreon. So of course he wasn't going to negatively report on the press about her. You had Patricia Hernandez who was involved, who wrote for Kotaku, and then with Patricia Hernandez, what people found out is her girlfriend was working on a game, and she was writing about her girlfriend's game. So it wasn't just Zoe Quinn, it was again this sort of pernicious clique of people who were all benefiting each other and not disclosing these relationships. So then we circle back around to Zoe, and Zoe was getting awards from Indiecades. Now, one of the judges at Indiecades was this guy, Robin Arnott. Robin Arnott was, of course, sleeping with Zoe at the time. Again, it wasn't disclosed. Again, it's this same clique of people. So again, friends were benefiting friends, money was exchanging hands, and sex was going on, none of which was being disclosed, and none of which was being negatively reporting on. Now, as a result of this, some magazines actually, when the negative press got to be too much, some magazines like Kotaku actually updated their code of ethics just to make it so, for example, you couldn't write about people that you were pledging to on Patreon, or that you had to disclose some of these prior relationships. Just very simple ethical things. And that was one of the really early and kind of only victories that our side got in Gamergate. Unfortunately, we lost. They won. But at least there was something to hang our hats on in all of this. Now, when it comes to Zoe Quinn cheating on her boyfriend with multiple guys, that's really sort of ancillary. That's not something that's really anything that we care about. That's just relationship drama. And same with her boyfriend leaking, intimate details about their relationship and about her cheating. Again, that's not really something that we care that much about. The reason we care is because of who she cheated with and why she was cheating. It was very apparent that she was sleeping with these dudes to advance her career. And the problem isn't only that she was doing this, it's that she even had the opportunity to in the first place. The appearance of impropriety is impropriety. And also, it's not really disputable that she did cheat on her boyfriend. Again, Nathan Grayson admitted that him and Zoe Quinn slept together. Again, the cheating's not really what matters, it's the impropriety, but many of the relevant facts are indisputable. As these ethic concerns in gaming journalism rose up, many of the internet autists started doing their research, and what they found was very interesting. They found that several journalists were directly contributing money to Zoe Quinn's Patreon. Again, when you're paying someone and you're also reporting on them, it's ethical to either A, recuse yourself, or B, at the very least, let people know that you're doing that. And Ben Kuchera was even donating to Zoe for several weeks on Patreon prior to writing an article about her game. Now, when talking about Zoe Quinn ruining the fine young capitalist game jam, they actually made a post about how she ruined it. Their post read like this: She fucking doxed me, ruined a production for women, refused to contact us, and is currently taking money for a game jam with no start date, no location, and no judges. Okay, here's my story. We ran a group that literally said, any woman come up with an idea for a video game, we'll give you concept art so you can pitch your game, and we'll put all the pitches online. The internet will vote, it says votes, on the best one, and we'll make that game and give the profits to charity. If you get a lot of interest online and want to make the game on your own, you can leave the contest at any time. Literally everyone that was in the top 5 didn't have programming experience, so they couldn't make their game on their own. She was like, why do you expect women to work for free to make games? We said, well, they get 8% of the money as royalties, and they just have to give an idea. Other people will make the game, and the profits will go to charity. Doesn't matter, it's oppressive. She started a fucking Twitter storm, crashed our website, got my personal information doxed, got us banned from Twitter. We email reporter what up, and they're like, duh, if Zoe says it's oppressive, it must be true. Maybe you should give her money for Rebel Jam, which has no start date, location, or any other information, but totally isn't a scam. This happened at 3 major online publications. We literally said we pay her to consult on future products, and we'd close down the contest if she would explain to us what is exactly offensive. No response at all, unless a reporter contacted her, and then she's the victim. All this information is fucking online. The pitches are online. We did everything we said, but no online journalist will publish the story. They post their website. Please vote, even if we don't raise enough money. If show there is enough of an interest, we can get the winner a grant to make their game. I am literally making no money on this contest. I just wanted to focus on something other than women being oppressed. I wanted to show that they made good games, and everyone said that not what women in games want to talk about. Obviously, English was a little bit of a struggle for them, but you get the idea. Robin Arnott, who was a sound designer, he was a judge in the Indiecade game competition while sleeping with Zoe, and helped give Zoe an award for her game Depression Quest.
Punching up the burn throttle on the Rageaholics Downfall of Video Game Journalism series. Today's subject is the long-awaited decapitation of a universally reviled fraudulence foundry, the only journalistic website for whom the word alleged is perpetually implied. I refer, of course, to Kotaku.com. Now, if IGN's heel goes the way of Achilles only at the sight of cold hard implied advertising cash, Kotaku doesn't even get weak in the knees until it's time to flat out fucking lie. I mean, in October of 2012, this is a site that outright refused to cover the Robert Florence Eurogamer.net outright journalistic censorship scandal.
A writer for Eurogamer wrote an article talking about gamers accepting cash and prizes from PR companies in order to promote their services.
Cowering behind just wafer-thin principle in the process by remarking that it was, and I quote, an irrelevant story, and adding further that what's much more important is, and again I quote, doing good games journalism. But you know what Kotaku did have time to cover in October of 2012? Rageaholics? Do you see? At McDonald's in Japan, French fries are causing all sorts of chaos. Oh, totte mo no kawaii desu yo.
Before Gamergate truly kicked off, there was already a decline in the quality of gaming journalism. This decline rapidly accelerated and even continues today with some of these very same gaming publications. It went from these publications essentially being advertisements for games. After all, they can't get their early review copies and interviews with actors and publishers while staying completely objective. The average viewer understands this, to overtly interjecting their ideology. This ideology was essentially groupthink progressivism. You'll even recognize some of these same tactics used in other areas such as 2020 during the BLM riots. Silence is violence. You must push the message. You must post the black square. If you don't, then you're just a black-hating bigot. You don't really care about the anti-white hatred, the anti-cop hatred, the buildings being burned. You just hate black people. Again, gaming journalism has been a failure for a long time. Even before Gamergate actually popped off, the mainstream outlets were already openly attacking straight white men. Again, this is a problem both because it's racist and because a large subset of your audience is actually straight white men.
There's an interesting thing about mainstream gaming journalism, which is that if you were to jump into a time machine and go back anywhere between 2 to 4 decades, roughly between the 1980s and early 2000s, there's something there that you're going to find in most gaming magazines that is largely absent from mainstream gaming journalism you'll find online today, which is that these magazines almost exclusively talk about, well, video games. And not only that, but they're actually pretty darn interesting. Now, fortunately, you don't actually have to jump into a time machine to do this. Anybody can check it out for themselves. There's actually a website that lets you download a lot of old gaming magazines from these times and read them. What you'll find is that articles were largely written pretty fairly and were very interesting to read and kept politics and ideology largely out aside from the extremely rare obscure joke. The writing style was about video games for video gamers. This is unfortunately in stark contrast to what we see today. Snap back to the present, and a lot of video game journalism looks like, well, whatever the heck this thing is supposed to be. No, seriously, what is this garbage? Did someone get confused on whether they wanted to make a publication about gaming, or about yoga instruction and positive affirmations, or whatever the current normie feel-good buzzwords happen to be? Where are the walkthroughs? Where are the tips and tricks? Where are the actual secrets that a gamer might have trouble finding? Where's the, well, anything at all that a gamer might care about? Seriously, this is complete, total garbage. Where did the good stuff go?
Another interesting sort of side story of Gamergate is Phil Fish's side story in the game Fez. Now, his game Fez won awards before it was even released, basically because there was judges who had a vested financial interest in the game's success.
Indie games were being treated like the second coming. Their creators were being held up as moral paragons.
I'm on the line. Me, like my name, my career. This is my identity. It's Fez. I'm Guy making Fez.
You are the prime example of what not to be within the entertainment field, let alone within the game development field.
You were the guys who did Indie Games the movie, and some of you looked relatively normal in it. One of you looked like a total tosspot in it.
But you can't have it both ways. You're successful game designers, you're indie game designers. Hurrah, good for you, you fucking hipsters.
You shit on your fans who were waiting for Fez 2. You shit on the development team that was making it. You ran with the money. You're telling everybody that's helped made your product a success that they all owe you now.
When the press then come to you and say, oh, this is something that's pertinent to the indie scene, and they are, you know, supposedly these pioneers, don't get fucking snicky about it, all right?
And this next one happened a bit later. Having seen these wankers over and over again bitch and moan, Phil Fish in particular, and then a little later after another guy talks, he's a fucking asshole most of the time.
You shit on an entire community of video game developers.
What do you think about the recently Japanese game?
They suck. And so this is what Fish said in response to Beer's angry rant. Hey fuckface, the thing with us tosspots, hipsters, is that we're not beholden to media leeches like you. And you're right, we're very successful. And we're not going anywhere. Get used to it, you middle-aged parasite. Compare your life to mine and then kill yourself.
Compare your lives to mine and then kill yourselves.
This, of course, called into question other games that won awards, including games by Zoe Quinn. And Phil Fish's game Fez actually won multiple years. And of course, as a result of this, it created quite the firestorm online. Again, people realized just how unethical some of these circles truly are. Now, towards the end of August 2014, there was a series of articles basically saying gamers were dead. And those articles, again, either in the title directly or somewhere in the article, were saying it's the death of gamers and that people should no longer identify as gamers. Now, this was very clearly in response to some of the things that were happening with Zoe Quinn and the criticisms that she was receiving and those involved were receiving. But B, it was also very apparent that despite all of these articles coming out from different places, that they were extremely coordinated. Again, these are articles using the same phrasing from different outlets sent out within about a 3-day span of each other. Now, of course, from the outside looking in, we can see that that is extremely shameless and brazen propaganda. There's not really any other way to put it. No one, of course, believes that it was a coincidence that all of these articles came out around the same time with the same verbiage. No one on earth believes that. Now, these articles are what rapidly accelerated the sort of Gamergate growth in the public consciousness. The reason this happened is, well, because the gamers saw these articles and the gamers got pissed, and then also more right-leaning celebrities got involved. This is finally when people like Adam Baldwin got involved in Gamergate, or Milo Yiannopoulos got involved in Gamergate, sort of right-wing e-celebs, and then as a result, it all kind of blew up and everybody was mad at everybody. Now, many on the left will call Gamergate a like right-wing harassment campaign. But the thing is, many of these key figures, such as Zoe Quinn, such as Anita Sarkeesian, who I'm sure we'll get into more, many of these key figures never really showed any proof that they were actually being harassed, outside of maybe like a sock puppet account that was just created that told them to kill themselves, which again is not good, but that's all that they had. Even Brianna Wu, another popular Gamergate figure, showed like a sock puppet account that told her to kill herself. It was basically like a minute after the account was created and the tweet was sent, she showed that tweet to her audience, and it's like, yeah, you could have seen that in your notifications immediately, but it would have had to have been immediate. So yeah, that timing would have had to have been perfect, but I digress.
She became an unwitting victim of bullying, harassment, and death threats. Threats came from those involved with Gamergate.
Now, as I said before, Brianna Wu has a history of harassing herself, verifiably, to try to make herself appear to be the victim. Because every victim of harassment has to manufacture it, right? It's almost like it's a supply and demand issue. The supply of the harassment does not equal the demand that Brianna has for harassment. And she's doing this because she can weaponize her victimhood. Now, of course, she doesn't address these things publicly. To my knowledge, she never has. I couldn't find any record of it. When confronted with this information, she just tries to bury it and move on. Now, again, you hear this narrative of Gamergate being about sexism and just that you hate women and you don't want women to succeed or have fun in gaming. This narrative, of course, is complete nonsense. I'm willing to grant even that some people in Gamergate disliked women and used it as an opportunity to attack women. I'm willing to grant that, but the main issue, of course, was simply about the ethics. But the problem is the people who were complaining about the ethics held no institutional power. And the people who made it about sexism and about this being a right-wing harassment campaign, of course they held all the institutional power, which made it extremely easy to only get one opinion across to the mainstream. Brianna has expressed regret over how things happened during the original Gamergate. Due to being a terminally online transgender, he still manages to play the victim and self-insert himself into the landscape today. Brianna desperately wants to be the good guy victim. Never let him forget Gamergate and the self-attacks. He must remember this and be embarrassed by it forever.
I used to think you were completely full of shit when you talked about cancel culture, and now they've run this playbook on me. The fact that the progressive fringe is now standing with the literal fucking terrorists, like, what the hell are we thinking? Look at what we're doing with the trans children debate. What is the progressive left's answer to any parent that has a question on any of that? It is shut the fuck up. We've got to move back to science and back to reality. People perceive progressives as assholes. A decade ago during Gamergate, people thought the white male gamers were the assholes. I've got news for you. Today, it's trans Twitter, it's socialist Twitter, it's terrorist sympathizer Twitter, it's us.
So then we have Lego Butts, or Felix Kramer, or formerly known as Maya Kramer, before she transitioned. Lego Butts worked for Silver String Media, which is sort of a consulting company similar to Sweet Baby Inc.
Let's just have one other look at another consultant for Sweet Baby Inc. And let's see what their attitude is towards white people, shall we? Pay me to shoot down your white male lead game ideas. That's whatever it is. Looking around the mixer last night put into perspective just how white and male our dev scene really is. It's really white and male. Okay, you know, you sort of pushed it a little bit with that one. I had a nightmare that I was a white male gamer. Oh, did you know? Poor you. I usually get grossed out when I see straight white rich people kiss. But even I think those two are pretty cute. Aw, he did a racism, but he thought it was cute. And then there's this one, Abortal. She just fucking what?
Dug into Maya Kramer's history. She was Maya Kramer then. She's now Felix. But so we discovered that one, Zoe Quinn claimed to the fine young capitalist that Kramer never worked for her. That's untrue because Kramer did PR for Zoe's games through a company called Silver String Media. Silver String Media is a critically acclaimed game studio and narrative design firm. With a team full of unique voices, we create hopeful, imperfect worlds, and we fill digital spaces with love and cosmic awe. Silver String Media is a queer-led video game and narrative design studio, crafting original games and providing services in digital placemaking and storytelling. Leadership based in Vancouver, British Columbia, and a team of diverse talents across Canada. Each of us bring a unique voice and multiple valued perspectives to the development process. So Silverstring Media, what they actually do, they've worked on Celeste, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, Manifold Garden, Wonder Song. They also worked on, I think, Tunic as well. This company is doing what Sweet Baby Inc. does. Same kind of thing. They do consulting work, and when you consult them to work for your game, they'll put together like PR and marketing. They'll punch up your scripts and make them more inclusive and more diverse. But they do the exact same thing. And though if you go to their team now, it's the same founder, but the people here are different. At one point, Maya Kramer worked for this company as well as Anita Sarkeesian. So Lego Butts was doing the same thing that they did that they're currently doing at Sweet Baby Inc. They did it 10 years ago in Silverstring Media. And nothing's changed.
Lego Butts was sleeping with a lot of people to get awards, just like Zoe Quinn.
That Lego Butts was having sex with people at the Independent Games Festival. And that was the big blow away from this video, is that she was fucking people who ran the IGF, some of them who were judges at the IGF, and her games were all winning.
I have so many questions.
The games she consulted for were winning.
Before the transition, of course. Now, Felix works for Sweet Baby Inc., and Sweet Baby Inc. essentially does the same thing that Silverstring Media did, which is consulting work on games. So you can see how things kind of come back around. Again, it's a lot of the same people. They're doing the same things. They're using the same tactics. It all comes full circle. Now, as I said before, these people are so twisted. They're such bad people that Zoe Quinn accused this guy, Alec Holowaka. She accused him basically of rape because they were exes at the time, and basically Alec, unfortunately being caught up in the progressive politics world, everyone separated themselves from him, including, it seems like, his sister, Eileen Mary Holowaka. As a result of this, he unfortunately killed himself. These people drove him off of what seemed to be false rape allegations. They drove him to suicide. And even his sister described his death as passing away. Passing away. It makes it sound like he had like cancer or something and succumbed to it. No, he killed himself because of what these people did. Again, these are sick and twisted people. They're not good people, and they are on the wrong side. Now, on top of this, Zoe Quinn also has a bunch of sexual harassment claims against her, and because she's kind of been in that position of power, she was able to kind of pin it on the accusers, and people would separate themselves from her accusers. But when she falsely accuses a man of rape, well, eventually that man gets driven to suicide. Another key figure of Gamergate is Anita Sarkeesian. Anita recently threw a wedding-themed birthday party because she's definitely not bitter, alone, and sad like most feminists. 12 cats will never replace the love of a husband and children. Anita Sarkeesian is a feminist movie critic. Yeah, and she's the founder of Feminist Frequency. Feminist Frequency, a website that hosts videos and commentary analyzing portrayals of women in pop culture. Her video series Tropes vs. Women in Video Games examines tropes in the depiction of female video game characters. She has also consulted in games production. Anita still does consulting today and actually has credits as of 2023.
Sarkeesian's own website, in fact, lists her primary occupation as being an industry consultant. Quote, looking to make your video game project more inclusive to a wider audience? You're not alone. Today's audiences crave authentic experiences that better represent a wider range of characters. As the media landscape evolves, inclusive content gains critical acclaim and broader audiences. I can help you. Anita, sweetie, I've seen your waistline. Make that a double wide audience.
And she's even had influences on games that she hasn't directly been credited on. Still, somehow, geniuses like Hassan Piker seem to believe that she had no influence on gaming at all.
Anita Sarkeesian did not play a role in the gaming industry at all, no matter how hard you try to justify it.
He also just has no idea what he's talking about.
There's still crying about Anita Sarkeesian, bro. Let it go. It is 2024. Why does this woman occupy so much space in your mind, your soul, your heart? What is going on? That's some real freak shit. bro. It's been decades.
Gamergate was a decade ago, not decades ago. This is the sort of on-the-ground journalism that you can expect from Hassan. Now, it can actually be hard to find the major releases she has consulted on, because the publishers actively hide her involvement and don't credit her on some things. Her official credits list is mostly irrelevant indie games, but if you do a little digging, you can find the truth. So for example, Neil Druckmann, who's one of the creative heads of Naughty Dog, has directly cited Anita and her video's influences. Arcane Studios took her critique seriously on Dishonored 1, and then corrected those mistakes on future Dishonored games. She is not someone who is irrelevant in the gaming space.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
The Last of Us Part 2, of course, focused heavily on defeminizing women to be more trans-friendly. There's also my favorite line in all of gaming, Bigot Sandwich.
What you got there?
Bigot sandwiches.
Yummy. So even with the Saints Row reboot, you had Saints Row developers saying that Anita Sarkeesian was right, directly citing prior videos of her critiquing them, and basically admitting that they're taking that to heart.
Here's an older article from 2014. A Saints Row developer, Sarkeesian, is right. He said, I actually think Tropes vs. Women creator Anita Sarkeesian is right in this case. He wanted to say that he believes the Saints Row series developer has improved in its treatment of women over the years, but said they still have room to grow.
Again, I cannot stress how much influence this woman has had on the gaming sphere as a whole. Yeah, she's not directly being cited in the credits, but these developers are directly pointing to her as a key influence.
Kind of like 100 years ago when people like Anita Sarkeesian were vaguely relevant for about 15 minutes and used their infamy to blackmail their way into major game studios. Nice dev team you've got there. Be a shame if someone was to spread rumors on social media that you don't care about representation and diversity. I guess you'd better hire someone like me to make sure that doesn't happen, eh? I mean, damn, man.
If you're someone like Hassan, stating that she's irrelevant in the gaming space and hasn't had any influence, you're objectively incorrect. So all those gamers were dead articles were coordinated. There was proof that they were coordinated. Not only proof that they were coordinated, there was proof that they were going to report positively on people in their clique and negatively on people who were not. There was actual group chat information that was leaked. And so we as the public got to see that yes, this was a coordinated response to the Zoe drama in particular. Now, one thing that's true, because these journalists in gaming are extremely progressive, and not just journalists, but many of the public figures in gaming as a whole, because they're extremely progressive, they often suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. Many of these people you see being reasonable up until 2016. Sure, maybe they weren't on our side during Gamergate, but generally they were at least somewhat coherent. But for some reason, there's many people who got broken by Donald Trump in 2016. Trump derangement syndrome is real, and you really see how it affects some of these people. One of these individuals is Adam Sessler. Now, Adam Sessler is known for his game review series X-Play and working for G4, and just being a journalist and personality in gaming media. But he still largely managed to stay somewhat relevant today. But he is definitely one of those individuals who suffers from Trump derangement syndrome. Now, Adam recently went a little nuts on his Twitter and then deleted his Twitter afterwards. Adam tweeted, "Had an epiphany. These protesting kids are pretty much Trump voters. Sure as shit ain't voting for Biden, so I feel towards them like any Trump voter. Fuck them. If the cops bust their teeth in, fine. At the end of the day, they hate me and wish me harm, not wringing my hands." And of course, people responded to this, questioning him. We had Merry Little Bastard here. "Yeah, man, kids and faculty protesting for peace specifically hate you. Adam, they hate Zionists, right? Well, I'm a Jew. Do you think there aren't any Jews at those protests? Those Uncle Tom JVP fucks. Yeah, I'm aware of them. They rent themselves out to give anti-Semites cover." He also later on tweeted this, "Okay, final post. Tried to point out that good intentions protesting Israel are corrupted with hateful means, screaming for Jews to die in one or another fashion. But that requires reading skills beyond what my audience ever achieved. That was my bad. But this experience does reinforce how much I regret spending the better part of my life in your virtual company. Catering to idiot gamers was a miserable experience because it was a daily exercise in encouraging a dog to not eat its own shit." Now, what's the over-under on Adam returning to X? Probably like a week or two. These people always complain that they're gonna leave because of Elon or because of Trump supporters or whatever, but they always come back because they can't help it. Now, the interesting insight in this tweet thread that Adam had is not only that he has Trump derangement syndrome, which he clearly does, but the other key insight is that he hates his audience and that he just used them as a means to an end, to make money, to get notoriety, but really he hates you. He has vitriol for you. If you watched his content in the past, he doesn't like you. So it's not just TDS, it's that he hates gaming and the gaming audience as a whole. And that's not exclusive to him, by the way. That is the case for many of these journalists in the gaming space. They don't even like games oftentimes. They just want to get money and get notoriety, probably because they can't make it in mainstream journalism, so they did what they thought was the next logical thing and stepped down to gaming journalism. Now, Adam has said and done a lot of dumb shit in the past as well. He's definitely one of the less coherent gaming journalists. He's even effectively advocated for doxing on camera.
Hate speech and online gaming. Ooh. The saucy topic. Don't do it. Would be a nice start.
Yeah, really. I don't know. I'm assuming no one would attest to being one of those guys who are in this room right now, but there seem to be a lot of them. Maybe a lot of them are in junior high school. I don't know. If you know someone who does this, could you stop playing with them? Could you call them a douche? I mean, it really does ruin the experience. When I hear, clearly a young person using racial epithets or derogatory terms for homosexuals, it just makes my stomach churn. And the idea that we are supposed to be a culture of people who at one point, if not now, felt already on the margins of a greater society, and then you just see this behavior that just replicates the same thing with a different target, it really kind of makes the whole affair seem a little bit deflated and defeated. It really, and don't even give me that First Amendment nonsense. You have every right to say it, and I have every right to call you a fucking asshole and try to find your address and put it out there. And one more thing. Are any of you people part of this absolutely ridiculous men's rights Reddit subreddit thing? This word misandry, which is thrown around with the frequency of Rip Taylor's glitter, is just got to be, I mean, it's just you don't get to flip the argument back to you, okay? You are the problem. Acknowledge it, go home, and think about how shitty you are. End of story.
Well, now that you've got Reddit pissed at us, we might as well continue. Anita Sarkeesian is not Magneto. And when people say she needs to be stopped, I think that's what people say about Magneto. She's not that. She doesn't have a sisterhood of evil mutants. She ain't gonna take your games away, and people calling you a dick for saying awful, antique, archaic words on Xbox Live, it's not going to make your games less fun. If that's what you need to make a game fun, then you are disrespecting video games, for one thing. And this is the reason why I have to play Call of Duty on Wii U now. So...
Yeah. All right. That felt good.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Until we check our Twitter replies in the fucking morning. And...
Oh, yeah. What if someone has a Twitter account that's just men? I want to get that right now.
And just write...
This is an individual who is deeply broken and probably never should have had any credibility in the gaming space in the first place. And him being gone, hopefully he stays gone from the gaming journalist space. And if he comes back, we can't give him any credibility. And we have to make sure people who are unaware of who he is and what he's done, we have to make sure that they know about the things that he's done and to not give him any credibility. Now, I hope he gets the professional help that he needs, but he is a miserable piece of shit, and hopefully he never comes back to gaming. Adams even said that people in his family who are Republicans should eat shit and die. This is how deranged this man is. Now, there's a lot of evidence that some of these gaming journalists don't even play the games that they review, or they play them extremely poorly. There was several stories, for example, of gaming journalist Dean Takahashi not even being able to beat the Cuphead tutorial, or barely being able to do anything in other games, and quite frankly, just being all around incompetent while still insulting the people who were critiquing him. You would think if your job was to play video games and write stories about them, then you would at least be somewhat competent. No one's saying you have to be a professional, of course, but you'd think you'd be able to beat the Cuphead tutorial after half an hour. It's a tutorial. GameSpot, who's another beacon of gaming's journalism, also complained that SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated was too difficult. You know, SpongeBob, the game made for actual children.
It's fine for games to punish players for being bad, but this game just feels constantly punishing for no reason, and it doesn't seem to notice it or acknowledge it.
Of course, the reviewer got extremely sufficiently roasted in the comments for being this incompetent. Kotaku, again, our favorite outlet, also accused Nintendo of putting a song with a slur in it, that slur being retarded, despite having an official lyrics list of the song, which of course didn't contain the slur retarded. Maybe Kotaku was just hearing themselves in the song. And like we said, many of these people, they complained about harassment when, one, there wasn't really, much in the way of evidence of harassment to begin with. If there was harassment, they would take like one person going, "Fuck you, bitch," and then they would cry about it for a month. And it's like, yeah, that probably fits the technical definition of harassment, but it's the internet. Like, anyone with any sort of following is going to get those random messages. You might not have even done anything to that person, but you're going to get those random messages or those random posts where someone is attacking you for no reason. It's going to happen once in a while, and these people were very prominent figures getting very, very little overall harassment, and yet they were able to twist the events of Gamergate into a right-wing harassment campaign, which of course is utter nonsense. In reality, it was a handful of sock puppet accounts that were pretty much irrelevant and they could have disregarded entirely. And yet these people were able to make the entire Gamergate movement about harassment. That's how much institutionalized power these people had in the gaming journalism space. Now, Gamergate has escalated to the point where people blame just about anything on Gamergate. They've blamed things like Donald Trump getting elected on Gamergate. They've blamed things like the COVID pandemic on Gamergate.
Oh yeah, this person's blaming the COVID pandemic on Gamergate.
It's completely incoherent and quite silly, but people have gotten this mindset right now that anything and everything that happens is a result of Gamergate. Somehow. It's always incoherent how these things are linked, but for some reason it all goes back to Gamergate. It's one of those things where you're like, how the hell does this even work? But for some reason, it all goes back to Gamergate. And even the events of today with Sweet Baby Inc., for some reason, it's all coming back to Gamergate. Only this time, it actually makes sense and isn't completely retarded. But for some reason, anything and everything is connected to Gamergate. And the reason why everything is kind of linked back to Gamergate is sort of like the left's Vietnam or their 9/11. It's really like one of the first times where they got any successful pushback as they took control of the major institutions.
Because Gamergate actually had some wins, and it wasn't just a complete victory for the progressives. They took some L's.
They took control of gaming and gamer news, but they actually got some severe pushback to the point where they couldn't take control of everything. They couldn't control the entire narrative. They couldn't control everything that they wanted to. They lost the battle on the ethics journalism, for example. They got some pushback, and this just scarred them. They could not handle it. They could not take it. Because of that pushback, this is why they tie everything back to Gamergate. Even things like we discussed that are completely incoherent.
Lots of stupidity, yes. They blamed everything on Gamergate. And they're still doing it. Like, this is 2022. Here's Anita Sarkeesian. Same shit, all right?
Now, these people, they equate Gamergate like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, which obviously is the historical event, for those of you who don't know, that is seen as the kickoff of World War I. These people see Gamergate in a similar light. Again, they think Gamergate led to the election of Trump and people dying from the coronavirus and January 6th. They think that Gamergate was the cause of that. It's completely incoherent and only makes sense sense if you really don't think about it. But when you actually sit down and think about these things, they really only make sense because, you know, time is linear and you're talking about an event in the past and then you're going up to current time. But when you actually, you know, try to tie those things together, obviously it's incoherent. Now, another tactic that the left used during Gamergate was they tried to make it that everyone who opposed them was a straight white male. That's what they always do. It's like, oh, it's only the straight white males who oppose us and you're just a bigot, you hate women, you hate gays, you know, all the same nonsense that they've been pulling forever. You know, you see the same thing during the BLM movement. You only oppose it because you hate black people. Or if you have concerns about the transgender stuff, you only oppose it because you hate gays and transgenders. And it's like, no, we oppose it because these things have detrimental and serious consequences that affect everyone in society. That's why we oppose some of these things. And as a result, some of these people had to come out and be like, no, I'm a woman, or no, I'm a person of color, or I'm a gay person, or whatever. People were coming out, and it really showed that the more right-wing side of Gamergate are actually the diverse people, because we don't really care on a granular level what you look like or sound like. We just care about video games. That's all the Gamergate people were about, was they wanted their video games to be good. They wanted their gaming journalists to have integrity. That's it. And so naturally, as a result of this, they were naturally diverse. Now, on a personal level, I don't really give a shit about diversity, but it is important to note that we were the more diverse side. Those involved in Gamergate at the time, the pro-Gamergate people, were the more diverse side. It was really the anti-Gamergate people who were not. And it's just funny to see, because it's the same tactics. Again, that's why I'm bringing this up, is it's the same tactics from a decade ago that you still see enacted today. The reality is you can't go along with it. You can't let it bother you. You just have to kind of laugh it off and just point fingers at these people and make fun of them, because they're gonna do the same thing. So as we mentioned before, basically the mainstream and the left-wingers tried to turn this into a, you know, straight white male right-wing harassment campaign, and as a result there was actually a group of people online who started the Not Your Shield hashtag. Now, these were people who were not straight white males who were on the pro-Gamergate side. And this was something that was first suggested on 4chan, to use the hashtag #NotYourShield to just try to push back against the social justice warriors, because they always say they're acting on behalf of women or minorities. Of course, even today, it's still a very, very common tactic for the left to use minorities to try to push their agenda through. Again, these anti-Gamergate people, they've held much power in the industry, and they've proven that they'll do anything to shut down opposing voices. This is why, one, that everything escalated to the point that it did, to where Gamergate somehow controls everything, but this is also why it's important to really discuss them and really point the finger at some of these people. These are not people with opposing ideas who just want, you know, what's best, and we just disagree on what's best. No, these are people who are, I mean, they're basically evil. They want to destroy you. They want to ruin your career. They want to publicly ostracize you. These people have driven certain individuals to suicide. They're not good people. And on top of not being good people, they oftentimes morally grandstand and pretend that they do in fact hold the moral high ground. These are some of the most hateful people out there, yet if you disagree with anything that they say or anything that they do, you're the evil one. You're the hateful one. They will come at you with their full vengeance. Again, they'll try to destroy you. They will DDoS your sites. They will go after your jobs. These people are bad people, yet for some reason, if you disagree with them, you're the hateful one. It always comes back to, you hate women, or you hate gays, or black people, or whatever. That's all it comes back to. Now, when I say Gamergate is like the left's 9/11 or like their Vietnam, it's because they received actual pushback from the political right for once. Now, why did they receive that pushback? Well, they received it because in the past they had been able to slowly and incrementally take over institutions. The left has been very successful at getting an inch and taking a mile, and they slowly did that over the course of about 60 to 70 years, and were able to essentially take over every institution. You look at things like academia or Hollywood, those are entirely controlled by the political left. So why was Gamergate different? Gamergate was different simply because the left fell behind. The gaming industry exploded. It took off faster than they could ever account for. And so as a result, they started behind the 8-ball. So when they turned up the heat, instead of slowly letting that frog boil, they cranked that shit all the way up. And this time, the frog jumped out of the pot. Now, during Gamergate, much of the vitriol that the political leftoids with the gaming journalists had was directed towards straight white male gamers, so someone like myself, which of course you see carrying on today with some of these outlets, again decrying straight white men. And of course, most people don't have an issue if you put in, a black character or a woman or something like that into a game, but it's when you're forcibly removing and making a point to remove straight white men because you hate straight white men that people have a problem with it. No one disliked Deathloop because the game had a black male protagonist. The people who disliked that game disliked it because, well, it ran like shit and was extremely vapid. People enjoy characters in video games because they're written well. But when you intentionally write for someone's race, and specifically when you try to shoehorn in someone because of their race or gender or their sexuality or the fact that they wanted to cut off their penis, when you specifically write those things in, it automatically takes away from how good the story is. And this, for obvious reasons, upsets people. People just want to enjoy a video game without being preached to, and when you're preaching to them, you're also making the story worse. So it brings it down not just one notch, but two. And today you see people being expelled from some of these woke groups because they don't hate straight white men sufficiently enough. Oftentimes these people are extremely pro-diversity, but they don't push that to the next point, which is hating straight white men. They're just pro-diversity. And again, because of this, they get expelled and they get ostracized, just like the straight white men that they're being told that they have to hate. And again, in the Gamers Are Dead articles, these companies aren't just attacking your random woman who plays video games, they're specifically targeting straight white men. And this is a consistent theme that you see amongst the extremely woke individuals. You could swap out the word gamers and put in the words straight white men. So as we've come back to it, Gamergate largely just revolved around ethics, people wanting gaming journalists to be ethical, and gaming journalists refusing to be ethical. It's really a simple thing that blew up to a crazy proportion. Now again, even in 2024, you still have major journalist outlets complaining about Gamergate. When Palworld was released earlier this year, CNN had an article that mentioned Gamergate. The article read as such: impassioned gamers behaving badly on behalf of a brand isn't new, such as the harassment campaigns, doxing, and death threats that came out of the Gamergate cultural wars from a decade ago. Toxic behavior even led to the swatting death of a Kansas man in 2017, and 91% of respondents to a game developer conference survey last year agreed that harassment and abuse have become a concern for studios. Even in 2024, major outlets like CNN cannot let Gamergate go. They just continue to push this false narrative that Gamergate was just a harassment campaign. And of course, because they have all the institutional power, that's the widely accepted narrative, despite the fact that it's false. Now, of course, many of the people who were involved in this stuff online know that at its core, Gamergate was not a harassment campaign. And those paying attention noticed as well, even if they weren't directly involved. And this really highlights just how corrupt much of the media truly is. And oftentimes with the corrupt media, you don't realize it until they talk about something that you're an expert in. Let's take another subject, for example. Let's say the media is talking about Israel versus Palestine. That's obviously something that's going on right now. It's worldwide news. Now, if you know nothing about that conflict overseas, the media can basically say whatever they want and convince you that it's probably true, especially if you have a trusting nature towards the media. And their take could be blatantly absurd. They could tell you that this war is over Barney dolls, but if you have no frame of reference and you don't know anything, you won't realize that it's false. But when they're wrong about something that you're educated in, you realize that they're humans, they have their own slants and biases, or that they're just willing to lie outright. For example, if you're a football fan, like myself, and they tell you that the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl last year, well, you know that's not true. They were not good. And it's not only that that would be wrong, because they would write their justification for why the Bears won the Super Bowl, and you'd be like, well, no, they didn't win the Super Bowl. I don't care what you tell me. You can't gaslight me into believing that. And then you realize, well, if they're wrong about this, and I know verifiably they're wrong about this, I don't even have to take a second to look into it. What else are they wrong about? And this is often sort of what opens people's eyes. It's not necessarily that they're lying about key topics or important world news. It's that they're lying about things that you yourself know aren't true. And of course, we're humans. We have reason. We can reason that if they're lying about one thing, they're most likely going to lie about another thing, and another, and another. Dishonest people are rarely dishonest just about one thing. They're typically dishonest about everything. And of course, many of these outlets aren't going to tell you how dishonest they're being because there's no incentive for them to be honest about their dishonesty. So as a result, you see a lot of, we investigated ourselves and determined that we did no wrong, which of course, you can't buy it. Anytime one of these outlets says that they did something wrong, that's one time where it's irrefutable, and it probably doesn't hurt their reputation to admit that they're wrong. But with something like Gamergate, which has been huge, massive story, if they admit that they were wrong about the narrative of Gamergate, then many of their other narratives come crumbling down. Now, another common thing that journalists do, especially those with no talent, is they just sort of name drop Gamergate. And it's to show their imperial overlords that yes, I too can play along.
Please promote me. I say the right things. I do the right things. I'm calling Gamergate a harassment campaign too, even though I probably don't even know what it is.
We're talking about video games, Gamergate. You don't get promoted and get more opportunities because you're a good journalist. You get it because you play along. And those who lack talent but want success, well, they have to play along because they can't make it on their own. Oftentimes what you see now is what we call circular reporting. And you see this in other areas of leftist politics as well. But what you get is you get an article that talks about Gamergate. That article references another article about Gamergate. And both of these articles will be saying it was a harassment campaign. But here's the problem. The original article also cites another article, which cites another article, which cites another article. And it keeps going and going and going. And it can be very hard to actually track down the original source article that they're getting the information from because they're all just citing previous articles. And oftentimes what happens when you get all the way back to the original article, the very first article, the ground zero that started it all, is you find that the claim was completely bogus. It'll be like one person or one source and they say it was harassment and they have nothing to offer. But the thing is, they know that if you're autistic enough to go back and look through it, you're in the minority. No one else is going to do that. Only you. And even if you are able to put that information on blast, lies spread much faster than the truth. And as I mentioned, you see this in many areas of left-wing politics today. I remember instances of this during the BLM riots of 2020, for example. Many articles would say that black people were overwhelmingly more in danger from police. And they would all cite one study, which was cited in another article. And then you'd go back, and when you finally found that original study, that's not even what it said. That's just what the original article said that that study said. But they know you're not going to look through all that information. Again, that's just anecdotal, but it is something that is very, very easy to spot today. And the next time a major news story breaks, start going back through some of these mainstream articles, and you'll see this circular reporting that I'm talking about. Now, coming back to today, you can start to see some of the similarities and things that were happening. So, for example, with Sweet Baby Inc., what happened when people first started reporting on Sweet Baby Inc.? They ignored it. Really, there was just outcry from certain fans, such as myself, who didn't like the things that Sweet Baby Inc. were involved in. Then, it got to the point where they had to respond. Cabrutus, the legend that he is, he made Sweet Baby Inc. Detector on Steam, and it gained so much traction that these people had to respond. And then when they responded, they tried to suppress it, which only made it escalate more. You can see many similarities of what happened a decade ago to today, and we're only scratching the surface. And you know these people know what they're doing is inherently wrong because they're angry that we're talking about it. Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, all it does is tell you what game Sweet Baby Inc. worked on. If Sweet Baby Inc. was proud of the products that they put out there and there was nothing more sinister afoot, they should be happy that someone made a resource that makes it so easy to know what games that they worked on. Same with what happened during Gamergate. During the original Gamergate, these people were unhappy that their relationships were being talked about. If everything was above board, if there was nothing to be concerned about, you wouldn't be angry about it. You're only angry about it because you have something to hide. Now, as I mentioned, part of why this whole issue with Sweet Baby Inc. blew up was because they tried to suppress information. One of the biggest catalysts was Chris Kindred, who's a narrative designer with Sweet Baby Inc., tried to get Cabrutus Rambo's Steam page, Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, taken down. But not only taken down, tried to get Cabrutus Rambo's entire Steam account banned. That Steam account could contain thousands of dollars worth of games in there. So essentially, they tried to cost Cabrutus Rambo thousands of dollars. And how did they do that? By false reporting and encouraging false reports of Cabrutus Rambo on Steam. Now, fortunately, this effort failed and just drew more attention to the whole situation.
What they do instead is start an active campaign to silence and censor anyone who speaks out about them, which in turn fans the flames of controversy and attracts even more attention to the problem that they created.
Now, Tolkien once said that evil cannot create anything new, that can only corrupt and ruin good forces have invented or made. And that's what these people are doing. They're not making anything new and interesting, they're only ruining things that already existed. They often use veiled threats and intimidation tactics to get their way. Now, of course, with Sweet Baby Inc., the market's kind of been oversaturated when it comes to videos of them. Everyone has been, using their name in their titles and using their logo in their thumbnails, myself included. And it did get a little tiring, and it should have been something that died down relatively quick. However, because of the attempted suppression of some of the news that was coming out about Sweet Baby Inc., that's what caused it to blow up. And it rapidly accelerated. But Sweet Baby Inc. has been around for a few years doing these same sort of things. It only just recently gained traction. And we saw some of these veiled threats from Kim Belair, for example, the founder of Sweet Baby Inc. herself. Go have a coffee with your marketing team.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
I have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something made it okay, but it was really a microaggression. And no one wants to deal with that while they're trying to make a game that they love.
So Kim Belair is another one of these anti-white racists, and she's basically said that she wants her and her non-white friends and ideologues to take over gaming.
In 2018, one of my best friends and I, we teamed up and we founded a company, and the original desire was just to write together. We wanted to write with the two of us and a friend. And basically, I think, to take over.
It's so interesting how basically all of these people, it comes down to just them hating white men or white people in general. It's very, very interesting. Now, again, we want to be clear. Sweet Baby Inc., they're not the people in charge. They're merely pawns in a larger game. They're a group of small bad actors being funded by larger groups of bad actors. They are the frontline, most obvious soldiers, and they are a symptom of a larger problem. It's important to remember that while they were the catalyst for all of this going on today, that overall, they're really just the tip of the iceberg. They're the first thing the ship sees when it crashes into it, but the reality is there's much more underneath. You also have Danny Lalander's a non-binary game developer, talking about how she doesn't hire white people and wants to create a safe space for black people. She doesn't realize that she's implying that white people make black people feel unsafe, and of course the truth comes out that she actually just hates white people. Sweet Baby Inc. and these other consultancy agencies are just full of anti-white racists. Now, Chris tried to not only get the Steam group that Cabrutus Rambo made called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected taken down, he tried to get Cabrutus Rambo's entire Steam account banned. Now, ultimately, Chris's attempts to get Cabrutus Rambo canceled backfired, and he kind of just ended up canceling himself. He, she, I'm not sure what Chris is. I should just say it. Judging by the profile picture, I would say a they, them. Now, Nathan Grayson, yes, that Nathan Grayson earlier from Nightly Activities with Zoe, when this news of Sweet Baby Inc. broke out, he himself wrote an article about it. This article titled, How a Small Video Game Narrative Studio Wound Up at the Heart of a Massive Anti-Woke Conspiracy Theory. Now, of course, in the article, he has to mention Pizzagate and QAnon, because apparently what you saw with your own eyes in Sweet Baby Inc. isn't real, and you should just believe Nathan and his nonsensical comparisons. And in the article, he calls the attempts to mass flag Cabrutus Rambo as supposed attempts. We have the screenshots to prove that they actually happened. Again, don't believe your lion eyes, believe Nathan Grayson. Now, Nathan Grayson has always been the paragon of ethical journalism, of course, as we've already established in the beginning of this video. Now, it's interesting that this narrative between the original Gamergate and what's happening now with companies like Sweet Baby Inc., it's interesting that it's kind of delved into this thing where the left political people in power always complain that it's just far-right activists and conspiracy theorists, and that they always just point the finger at that boogeyman, when the reality is that many of the people who oppose them aren't even right-wing necessarily. They're more like liberal but not progressive. I'm actually kind of in the minority of people who are against Sweet Baby Inc., where I actually am a right-wing individual. Now, of course, it makes sense that the right-wingers would be against the Sweet Baby Inc. or against a lot of the people who, you know, caused that to snowball in the left-wing journaloids. But it's funny how many of these people who are on our side in this instance are just liberal but not extremely progressive. It's something that I've noticed a lot of, is many of the people who are complaining about this DEI initiatives in gaming, they're left-wing. They're not even right-wing. They're just not that left-wing. Now, another thing that people need to realize is that Sweet Baby Inc. is just a symptom of what's going on currently. They're one company when there's many companies like this. So if we say Sweet Baby Inc. and companies like them, just know there's many others. And Sweet Baby Inc. right now is just kind of the placeholder. They're kind of the symbolic company that we can all point a finger at and laugh at. But the reality is there's many more of these companies, and we don't even know who they are. And I'm sure as they do crazier and dumber things, they'll get exposed, but there is many of them. And so as they come up, we have a responsibility to point these companies out and tell people to stay away from games that they've been involved in. It's interesting the euphemism that Sweet Baby uses. They call people, mainly white men, who don't like the games that they work on, they call them picky babies. So their company is named Sweet Baby. You know, because they want to highlight all the people who are super pro DEI and super pro diversity. But if you oppose it, you're a bigot. You're a picky baby. You're either a sweet baby who does what we want you to, you eat your vegetables, or you're a picky baby because you won't accept the propaganda. Some of these other narrative consulting companies include companies like Weird Ghosts, Silverstring Media, Hit Detection. Again, these are companies that we need to tell our friends about. Say, hey, this company worked on this game. This game is probably going to suck. I wouldn't spend your money on it. We really need to encourage people to vote with their wallets. Many of these companies are already complaining about layoffs. If you don't buy their games, more and more of those people are going to get laid off. More of those companies are going to go out of business. Now, again, if there is a game that you or your friend is extremely excited about and one of these companies happen to work on it, it might still be an alright game. But you would want to remember to be cautious, because there probably is going to be some forced diversity publicity or forced propaganda that is injected into the games because these companies worked on them directly. Now again, these narrative companies, they really can't create anything. They have to pervert and destroy it. And oftentimes what they do is they just make random people gay, or make random people female, or make random people black, because they can't create these characters to be interesting themselves. Oftentimes what they call representation is just forced tokenism. Now I'm not black, but if I was, I could see it being pretty insulting that a company just thought they could inject a black person in it to make me happy. To me, that would seem pretty demeaning. If a story is good in a game, I can enjoy the story regardless of what the race of the fucking character is. I don't need to be pandered to. Being pandered to is extremely, extremely demeaning. I don't need someone to talk down to me because of my skin color in order to sell me something. In fact, what they're doing right now, talking down to me because of my skin color, because I'm white, makes me less likely to buy their games. And it would be the same if they were injecting white people in games just to appease white people. I'd be like, I don't need this. Now it's funny that these people would complain that someone like me is a grifter, when you can tell that they clearly haven't played much of the source material and that they're doing what they're doing for money. You know, the definition of grifting. So anytime they call someone like myself or any other remotely right-leaning figure a grifter for opposing their agenda, it just makes me laugh. It's comical. It appears that Sweet Baby Inc. even pushed their extortion efforts to the upcoming release of Black Myth Wukong, allegedly trying to get them to give Sweet Baby Inc. $7 million. Fortunately, it appears that the devs refused to work with Sweet Baby Inc. But of course now Black Myth Wukong is actually being attacked for not being progressive enough. Also, it appears that IGN used a bad translation to attack the game. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not that was intentional. Nice game you got there. It would be a shame if it received some bad publicity. As a result of all this, the game actually became a top wishlisted Steam game.
Specifically, Sweet Baby Inc. is named, that reached out to the developers and tried to say, hey, listen, we get that your reputation isn't very positive right now, so why don't you hire us to sensitivity read for your game? Maybe we can give you some feedback. Maybe we can help you push forward past all of these controversies. And apparently the developer said there is no possible way.
Now, fortunately, it looks like several of the games that Sweet Baby Inc. have worked on are flopping. The studio that made Tales of Kenzara Zao was hit with layoffs, Alan Wake 2 lost money, and Suicide Squad committed a $200 million loss. This hasn't come without a fight. The Sweet Baby Inc. detected Discord has been hacked, and many people got banned from it as a result. Cabrutus's website has also received multiple DDoS attacks. Black Girl Gamers is another consultancy agency that acts like a cult. Gothix found out the hard way there. She refused to hate white people, refused to make everything about her race, spoke out against the cult, and was promptly ostracized by its members.
As a former Black Girl Gamer member, I can confidently say these people are full of crap. They do not care about diversity. They promptly kicked me out for being anti-black, aka not making an idol out of my skin color, and refusing to hate white people. I continue. I was harassed for months after the fact and received an onslaught of vitriol from many of their black members. You know how BGG responded? They blocked me and literally scrubbed my existence off of that platform.
We also have Melanin Gamers who rank games based off of how toxic they are.
Welcome to Melanin Gamers.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. This is not a meme. This is not a parody. This is not a joke. This is Melanin Gamers. This is their About Us section on their website. Melanin Gamers is dedicated to increasing diversity and inclusion in the video games industry. It is more than a gaming community. It is a show of support, a cry for some desperately needed change as a safe space, and online and in real life community for people of color to come together.
What?
Share ideas and feel represented. We want to be seen and heard. It is
ma'am,
a necessity in the current climate we are living in, and we believe that by creating this platform, we will be able to strive towards changing an industry so that it reflects all of us who are part of it. We are not calling for needless tokenism.
Black girl magic!
But a real shift in the tide from the grassroots to the very top.
One real problem that we have as gamers is that we don't really have a plan to eject these political ideologues from the gaming movement. Sure, we complain when they inject their progressivism into games, but outside of that, we have no real coherence. Furthermore, with the advancement of ESG and many of these companies getting substantial ESG money that went into games development, for the next couple of years, these games are probably only going to escalate in their progressivism. The average game right now takes something like 5 to 7 years to complete for a full-fledged AAA game. This ESG money that they were receiving only just recently started to dry up for many of these companies. So how do we as gaming consumers get this stuff out of our games? Unfortunately, this is a major problem that we face. We have no coherent plan for this. We're much more reactive than proactive. Now, many of these companies were struggling, which is why they took this ESG money in the first place. In their hiring, they prioritized diversity over actual competence, and this understandably led to some consequences. When you hire people just to push a message and not to do a job, of course they're probably gonna suck at that job. Sure, they say all the right things on Twitter or X. Sure, during the 2020 riots they posted the black square on Instagram, but these people suck at their job. So over time, the quality of the games that these companies released generally went down, fanfare went down, and the amount of money that they had, of course, went down. And of course, there's really two solutions that the company is faced with. They can either A, do mass layoffs and hire actual competent people, or B, they can accept some of that sweet ESG money, and when they do that, they can keep pushing the message. And not only can they keep pushing the message that they already wanted to push, they can push it even harder. Because after all, one of the requirements of getting that money is you have to show that you're willing to push
the message.
And as we already established, many of these companies, they already hold these beliefs. Most of their employees are already extremely progressive. There is a lot of progressive groupthink going on at these companies. So when you give them carte blanche to push the message, oh, they're going to push it. They're going to push it right up your fucking ass. And this, of course, is where companies like Sweet Baby Inc. come in, or people like Anita Sarkeesian come in. These companies have to bring in outside consultants to make sure that they're pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion enough. Now, Sweet Baby Inc. is not the only problem in gaming right now. In fact, Sweet Baby Inc. is a small fish in a large pond. You guys know how we were discussing that ESG money? Well, that actually comes directly from the federal government. That's right, your tax dollars are funding ESG in video games. Your money that the government stole from you is directly coming out of your paycheck, out of your bank accounts, out of your wallets, going all the way back around to these companies just so they can preach at you about how you're a bigot. Isn't the federal government just wonderful? All hail President Brandon. Black Girl Gamers is similar to Sweet Baby Inc. in that they are another team that does consulting. And I'm sure you guys can tell that judging by their name, they're probably not a big fan of someone who looks like me. You know, they're Black Girl Gamer, I'm a white guy. You know, maybe they'll let me in. I don't know. I should ask them. But they also push this progressive ideology to the point of being cult-like. They use many of the same practices that cults use to push their narrative agendas. You can't question their authority. You can't criticize them. Anything outside their worldview is evil. Ostracizing former members. All of these same telltale signs of a cult. And of course, me as a white male gamer, I can't have my own group called White Male Gamers because that would be racist and that would be sexist. It would also be awesome. Just kidding. This is just kind of a side note, but it is interesting to point out how many of these consulting agencies, they cannot create an original character of their own that happens to be, you know, a black character or a female character or a black female character. They oftentimes have to bastardize an already existing character with an existing lore and background that would lend to them being white or a male or a white man. It'll be a character with like European descent with long-standing history of their skin being fair, like Snow White or The Little Mermaid. We saw this in those movies, for example. They'll have these long histories of being white, and they can't make their own separate character. No, they have to overwrite that history because it's not enough to just have a character out there who fits your agenda. You also have to suppress the characters that don't. These people, they always eat their own, because eventually someone's going to have to go against the narrative in one capacity or another. And as we already established, they are effectively a cult. And if you go against the cult leaders, you're done. So talking about the decline in gaming journalism, we have the geniuses over at Kotaku lying on behalf of Sweet Baby Inc., stating Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't do what some gamers think it does. No one company isn't forcing diversity into all of your favorite video games. Now, Sweet Baby Inc. as a consulting company, that is what they do in the story writing. They are story consultants. Let's take a look at their website and see what their website says. Founded in 2018, Sweet Baby Inc. is a narrative development and consultation studio based in Montreal, in Canada, and working around the globe. Our mission is to tell better, more empathetic stories while diversifying and enriching the video games industry. We aim to make the games more engaging, more fun, more meaningful, and more inclusive for everyone. Sweet Baby Inc.'s own website directly contradicts the Kotaku article. So again, because companies like Kotaku were trying to suppress what was going on with Sweet Baby Inc., it sort of had the opposite effect, the Streisand effect, where you try to suppress something so it actually draws more eyes to the situation as a whole, and everything escalates way beyond the point it ever would have to begin with. Before these outlets started trying to actively suppress dissent, it was really only people like myself or like a handful of others who were more right-leaning figures in the space, or people who just value integrity, who were talking about these things, but it wasn't really anything where it was blowing up at all. But because these outlets and the individuals involved struck back with such vitriol and tried to suppress everything, they just drew more attention to themselves. Now, fortunately, this sort of boycott of Sweet Baby Inc. has been fairly successful since all of this has started to happen. Recently, a game called Tales of Kenzera Zhao, what a name, was released, and it's a game that Sweet Baby Inc. directly worked on. Now, this game did terribly as a result of the boycotts going on. Its total concurrent players peaked at just 287. Now, as I'm sure you guys are aware, that is fucking horrible. This game absolutely bombed, and it's a direct result of the Sweet Baby Inc. boycott and the Sweet Baby Inc. detected page on Steam. Us, the fans, and people like Cabrutus Rambo, who made the Sweet Baby Inc. detected page, we are the reason that this game bombed, and it is glorious to see. Now, of course, the criticism of people who are boycotting this game is that they're racists, and it's because the guy who made the game is Kenyan and he just wanted to promote his culture. Now, obviously, that's not true. I mean, I'm racist, but I'm in the minority. The other people who are boycotting this game largely are just people who are tired of all the DEI nonsense in games and the things Sweet Baby Inc. are doing. Now, of course, they're complaining about people like Cabrutus because he made the Sweet Baby Inc. detected, and it's funny because he's not even white. And this, of course, as we've discussed many times, is a common tactic. They just cry racism because they know it's effective. In this game as well, it's not even that it was just something where Sweet Baby consulted on it a little bit. It seems pretty clear that they worked heavily in the development process, so that also is a really big turnoff for the average person like probably you watching this video. And as we discussed gaming journalists as well, you can see clearly that they do not like YouTubers who are critical of them. They often openly attack those YouTubers just because those YouTubers push back on their ideology or their lazy writing. They do not handle criticism well. I cannot stress enough how much these people, A, hang together, and B, push the message
and an unhealthy focus on the message
above all else, and any criticism must be attacked full force. Now, if you're critical of these journalists, even if you don't directly tweet at them, they're so vain they will find your tweet and block you anyway. This has happened to many people, where they look one day and they're just blocked, and they have no idea why, because they've never actually tweeted at the person, but their tweets showing up in that person's timeline once in a while, well, that's enough to do it. Some of these people have even gone far enough to hire people or get bots to block people who are critical of them as well, just so they don't have to take the effort to actually go through and manually do it themselves because they block so many people. One of these journalists is Alyssa Mercante. Now, Alyssa has a history of posting publicly on her Twitter anti-white statements and attacking people who disagree with her. She tries to bait people and engagement farm. She also encourages people to leave the company that she works for while she retains her job so she can get the promotions. At least that's what it seems like, because they leave and then it looks like she's the next in line in promotion, and some of her hit pieces have been some of the higher trafficked articles on Kotaku. She's even gone after people publicly like Grums or Melanie Mac. And of course, oftentimes she doesn't contact these people directly. No, she wants to get in touch with people who know them but dislike them so she can attack them with insider information. And with Alyssa Mercante, of course, if she exits gaming journalism or gets fired or whatever, her plan is to go back to sex work, because instead of writing gamer guides, she'd rather just sell her ass.
I'm just gonna go back to sex work because at least when I a lot, I get paid for it well.
Looking at her profile picture, she might be more qualified to write for Kotaku. Now, Alyssa Mercante, she also joined the Sweet Baby Inc. Detected Discord and basically was trying to reach out to people and get them to reveal private information to her so she could try to destroy their lives. She thought she was being real sneaky and clever and being like an undercover detective and joining this Discord, and like she was going to, you know, infiltrate some high-level maximum security prison or something like that. But the reality is she hit the join Discord button, and then she wondered why no one responded to her when everyone knew that she was just going to try to ruin their lives. Nice try, Fed.
God, if I ever get fired, I'm going back to bartending and sex work. This industry. Happy International Whores Day. I used to be a cam girl. Work is work. Let me be clear. Fans good. Work is work. I do not want to invalidate that in any capacity. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, and I'm sorry.
Now, Alyssa Mercante has a history of hating white people. She's publicly stated many times that you can't be racist towards white people, even on Twitter where she got community noted. She also made it her banner for a little while, a quote of her saying you can't be racist towards white people. This is not uncommon amongst these consultant types. Typically, they're all of the same mindset that racism's okay as long as it's against white people. Alyssa openly and brazenly even shopped around an idea for a hit piece on Melanie Mac. Of course, she didn't directly state that she was targeting Melanie, but she wasn't exactly going to great lengths to hide who she was targeting.
Ready to try to witch hunt me right now, apparently. I just learned. So
Let's go!
Yeah.
Let's go!
Alyssa Mercantile, she basically tweeted out that she's looking to do another story based on a Twitch streamer, Christian, who's posted homophobic views and shit like, and wants a bunch of information on her.
who could that be? And she's like, I'm looking for people who knew her before her rise to fame.
Oh, send me an email.
Radicalism. She's trying to imply that, oh, you just started doing all this commentary for the grift to get famous, and it's like, are you aware I was hosting for GameStop TV, Riot Games, Walmart Game Center, all of these companies, and I threw all that in the trash to start speaking out and sharing my opinions. But no, they're going to try to paint this narrative.
Melanie, I would be offended if I were you, because she didn't even mention transphobia.
Yeah.
I know!
How dare she?
Alyssa has also threatened to sue Smash JT. What for? Well, mainly covering the nonsense that she's been doing. It doesn't seem clear what she would actually claim in the legal action at the time of recording, so it really seems like it's an empty threat just designed to scare dissenters. Now, Alyssa Mercante has continued to just get more and more unhinged. I guess this is what happens when you hire a sex worker with a lesbian haircut to be your senior editor, but she's really stepped off of the deep end as of late. She has actually reached out to someone's wife on Facebook to complain about that individual. Now, I don't know about you, but finding someone's wife's Facebook and reaching out to them, messaging them and telling them that they should hate their husband is pretty fucking deranged. I mean, clearly she's a very stable and well-adjusted human being who shouldn't be on any medication at all. Now, of course, she was mad at Smash JT because, well, he started a position to basically say end Kotaku, the website she works for. But it's one thing to be mad at an individual for saying the company you work for shouldn't exist anymore, which he's totally right, Kotaku sucks. And it's another to just directly contact that individual's wife.
Alyssa Mercante has reached out to my wife on her private social media account, trying to ruin my life. Searched her out, which, I mean, to me, this is insanity. And her DMs were on that same line of thinking. You and your ilk are sending harassment towards countless people for clout. out. That man could effing kill someone, and you're emboldening him. I truly wish nothing but the worst for you for the rest of your miserable effing life. And then a couple minutes later, you're an effing 45-year-old man. Look at what you're doing with your life. What am I doing with my life?
And again, she had to go dig up this information. It's not like this was publicly available information. She had to go out and find his wife to be able to message her. She had to do some internet sleuthing. And this, of course, is a part of their sort of communist playbook. Alyssa gets mad, harasses Smash JT and his wife, and then when she's rightfully called out on it, then she claims she's being harassed. And of course, that's incoherent. We, just casually observing, know that's incoherent. The thing is, they know it's incoherent as well. The reason they're doing it is they want to be charitable to their friends and uncharitable to their enemies. This is directly a play out of the Herbert Marcuse playbook. It also appears that several Sweet Baby Inc. alums and Sweet Baby types are trying to get people fired from their jobs for criticizing them. Chris Kindred, yes, the same Chris Kindred that started Gamergate 2, seemingly called Smash JT's former place of employment trying to get him fired. When they aren't wishing you dead, they're trying to get you fired. You cannot go against the narrative or you will be eliminated. I highlight these points again to show that these people are not good people. In fact, they are evil. Now, I'm not perfect, but I've never been upset enough that I've tried to call someone's job and get them fired, especially someone I've never actually personally met before. To me, that seems like a lot of effort to go through when I could just, ignore the person or block them. But these people do not think like you or me. Again, you must be eliminated if you are a threat to the regime.
So how does Smash know that that was him? Well, he called and he said, "This is Chris," and then he left a fake last name, but he left his real phone number. His real phone number, which is publicly listed. So so Smash was like he couldn't believe it that this guy actually left it. His real phone number. So I guess that goes back to, what are we doing here? Smash he has his wife approached by the Kotaku blogger. Now he has somebody from Sweet Baby Inc. literally calling where he used to work, trying to get him fired, right? What are we doing here? Sav, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
It's funny because when I saw it this morning when I woke up, that's all I thought too. What are we doing? And then I'm like, oh, my inner Beardo is showing. So what else can you say? Because it doesn't make sense. How does a grown individual justify their thought process to get to that point?
So then you have Alyssa Mercante going after Farm Folks. Now, Farm Folks is a independent farm sim, and they tweeted out about breast jiggle physics in their game, basically just kind of asking their audience how much jiggle physics that they want. Now, it's a little silly that they went ahead and tweeted that, but that's what happened. So, of course, Alyssa Mercante attacked them for that view. Now, unfortunately, that company did bend the knee. They deleted the tweet and they apologized for it, but also it seems like Alyssa Mercante still went after them and still intentionally misrepresented some of their views. She effectively claimed that he was calling some gamers incels, and Alyssa Mercante effectively claims that Alex Kolshelkov, the CEO of Crytivo, was calling people gamers, specifically calling them incels, and he says that's not true. And basically he did an interview with her to try to explain the situation and apologize for anything that had happened and for getting people upset. And of course, Alyssa has a history of, being dishonest and inflammatory. Now, the initial backlash came from the DEI consultancy agency Black Girl Gamers, the ones that we've talked about before, and after they deleted the post, they responded with this. We like to address a recent post where we came to our community asking for feedback. Our intent is always to connect and grow with our players, but it's clear that we really missed the mark on our recent community feedback post. For that, we all sincerely apologize. Farm Folks continued, we have received concerns about the female player player models' breast physics in the past, and we thought we should ask the community what felt more appropriate. Unfortunately, this crossed a line. We try to foster a welcoming community, and the post and subsequent replies made many of our community members uncomfortable and alienated. The reply made about 150% physics was also inappropriate, and we apologize for that. We are taking the necessary steps to learn from this, and we're committed to doing better moving forward. Now, Black Girl Gamers attacked Farm Folks with a series of tweets, the main one reading as such. As you can imagine, boobs are a sensitive subject, especially since women have been subjected to a lot of vitriol in gaming lately, and the latest discourse regarding sexualization of characters. If this is indeed has body positivity intention, then in future it may be worth changing the copy of the tweet to reflect that, i.e. they can't fucking type apparently. Now, of course, with this company bending the knee and apologizing when they really didn't have to, it just makes you lose a lot of respect for them, and it's not really a game that I probably would have ever played anyway, and well, I'm probably definitely not going to play it now. Now, if this is a game that you're interested in, I wouldn't necessarily say you should write it off completely, but things like this are a really good tell of what companies and what people you should support. You should support people who stand up to companies like Black Girl Gamers or to people like Alyssa Mercante, and you really shouldn't support people who bend the knee to them. Again, it's not a game that I care about, but if it is a game that you care about, I would proceed with caution. Now, all of this has culminated in Alyssa actually challenging people to physical fights. Vera Dark actually accepted the fight with Alyssa and tried to set one up through Keemstar. Of course, Alyssa immediately shifted the goalposts and tried playing the victim. This is just about engagement and drama farming. Of course, when someone accepted, it wasn't the way she wanted to fight.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're gonna be a cunt.
Yeah.
And hateful. And that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse, because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
She doesn't want people who are cunts around. Maybe she should take her own advice. During the recording of this video, there came the news that Dr. Disrespect was messaging a minor in 2017, which led to his Twitch ban in 2020. When the doc admitted to having messaged the minor, hit pieces came out targeting people that were just asking for evidence of Doc's misconduct, and that was before his admission. Hit pieces claiming that people wanted him to be let off the hook. Again, this was false and blatant defamation. The gamer targeted Melanie Mack and Vera Dark, who again were not defending the Doc's actions. And of course they were attacking Nick Merckx as well because he had some harsh things to say about the Alphabet Mafia.
Why do so many influencers want to let Dr. Disrespect off the hook?
Nobody wants to. We just want other platforms and other people to also be held accountable for knowing this information. No one's trying to let him off the hook. It is a scummy fucking thing that he did.
Now, I should clarify because there actually has been some speculation that Alyssa has been laid off from Kotaku as well. However, it hasn't been confirmed at all. At least as of the time of recording this, it seems like she probably still has her job with them, but it is possible that she was laid off too. Again, none of this is going to fix the reputational damage that Kotaku has suffered, not even by a long shot, because she's just another cog in the machine, and if she leaves, she would just be replaced by someone who would just be as insufferable as her. So Kotaku has laid off multiple staff members recently. Somehow Alyssa Mercante has kept her job, but they are failing as a company slowly over time. And it's directly a result of them attacking their core audiences. They hire people who don't care about games and who attack their audiences, and then they fail. They're a dumpster fire of an organization, and it's a good thing that they are failing and that they are laying people off. Every writer they seem to have has the same opinions, and it's completely disconnected from the opinions of the actual gamers. And not only is it a different opinion, it's actually adversarial. They get upset at gamers for complaining about things like censorship in Stellar Blade. The gamers wanted no censorship. Kotaku wanted censorship. And then Kotaku got mad at the gamers that wanted the game that was advertised to them. This, of course, causes viewership to dwindle because this isn't the only time this has happened. This has been a continual, repeated behavior from Kotaku for years. I don't even remember a time where Kotaku was taken seriously. There probably was a time where the majority of gamers took them seriously, but I honestly don't remember it. They've been a joke for as long as I can remember. It even looks like Kotaku is looking for a new editor-in-chief. Unfortunately, it appears to be more of the same DEI-driven journotards who exist solely to push progressive politics. The inmates are running the asylum. Again, none of these people actually appear to be gamers. Stuttering Craig actually applied and actually seems to have the relevant credentials, but we know that he'll likely never get the job because 1, he's a straight white man, and 2, he's not a progressive. Kotaku, the outlet that Alyssa Mercante works at, has of course been failing for quite some time. The editor-in-chiefs have resigned, and many of the staff are upset because they have to churn out game guides, which would actually require them to, play games, instead of just writing stupid hit pieces. Again, they are not gamers. The revolution is the message. It also appears that Kotaku and Sweet Baby Inc. have been using bots in their social media threads, probably to make them seem like they have more positive engagement than they actually do. It's getting really pathetic at this point.
The job listing on GO Media emphasizes the need for a diversity hire in their new hire, specifically mentioning a preference for candidates who are not straight white males. And that right there kind of threw me for a loop. I'm like, okay, so they're looking to put someone in charge of the loony bin, of the nut house, and saying, hey, okay, you guys are all insane. Let's redirect this ship and make it better by hiring someone exactly like you Looney Tunes. Specifically, it says, GO Media is deeply committed to fostering a transparently inclusive workplace environment, and people of color, women, people with disabilities, veterans, and LGBTQIA+, holy shit, that's an alphabet, candidates are very strongly encouraged to apply. Our company-wide mission is to reach very diverse audiences, and so we are deeply committed to having teams and leaders that reflect this mission. Pretty straightforward. They want to make sure they hire someone who's not white, not straight, and not a male.
Now, going to modern day, you do have Stellar Blade, which was just recently released.
Stellar Blade had great marketing, telling us that the game will be uncensored, raw, and uncut. Yes! Around the world!
Now, the developers, Shift Up, promised no censorship, and they had outfits in the game that they advertised. But the problem is when the game came out, there was a patch that was released that did censor the game. Now, at this time, this is still kind of developing at the time of this recording, but it seems likely that Sony pushed that through and decided to do that. And the reason we believe it's Sony is because everything kind of has to go through Sony. When it's a PlayStation exclusive, they have the final approval over everything. And this, of course, has upset many of the people who pre-ordered the game because they pre-ordered it because they liked what was in the game, not what Sony wanted to be in the game. And really, it came down to almost being like a bait and switch. And of course, the fans, they bought the game based on the outfits that they saw in the trailer and the gameplay and graphics and all of that. But the product that they receive is not the same. And another reason why it seems like it was probably Sony's decision and not the developer's decision is because the developer basically came out and said that they were having internal meetings with Sony as soon as this news dropped.
Sony removing Stellar Blade's unintentional N-word reference.
What? That's the title? Ugh.
Gaming journalist. Sony says Stellar Blade art referencing racist language was unintentional. Will be patched out. Well, thank God.
And Sony, too, of course, has a history of censorship, but they're very odd in the things that they censor. Oftentimes, certain games get through and uncensored, and other games get censored. If you look at The Last of Us Part 2, for example, a huge release, it was uncensored, and unfortunately, you saw Abby's peck tits. It was disgusting. But then, when you have an attractive protagonist, that's when they want to censor it. And some of this probably is Japanese versus Western studios, and some of it is probably to appease the trans agenda. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for this overall. Now, ultimately, I don't really care if the character is dressed more skimpy. In fact, I'm fairly pro-modesty and anti-gooning. Seriously, stop gooning right now. But that's not really the point. This is just an example. The point is, we're tired of censorship in games, particularly when it suits certain woke narratives. These are done to appease the Twitter mob. Again, largely the alphabet mafia and the feminists online. It's not so much that we want the character to be naked or to be dressed skimpy and to have jiggle physics. It's that we're tired of the censorship of games that have promise, all to appease these screeching rees online. It's just a clear double standard, and we want it to stop. And it's funny that the people who have a problem with this character being dressed skimpy are the same sort of people who want to cut your child's dong off or talk to him about sex. These people have no problem going to elementary schools and reading pornography, but a character in a video game designed for adults showing a little bit too much skin is a step too far for these people. Also, a lot of these people are, sex workers or pro-sex worker. So again, it's not even that they have a problem with boobs. They want to push a narrative through. They have their own agenda and they want to push it through.
The message.
They want to see the game fail because people like us enjoy it. It's not because there's a little bit too much boob showing. With Stellar Blade as well, many of these people don't have any sort of issue with nudity or skimpy clothing or attractive female forms. Many of the people decrying the model in Stellar Blade, which by the way was actually modeled off of a real woman, many of the people decrying her body and getting upset on the journalist side of things, many of them are sex workers or former sex workers. They do not have a problem with promiscuity or nudity. In fact, they encourage it. In fact, some of them probably use the term map instead of PDF file. I would be willing to bet that if you look through some of their Twitter history, there's probably some sort of reference to that there. My point is, these are not puritanical individuals. They're only selectively puritanical. They're only pro-censorship of Stellar Blade because it's something their political opponents like. If we were against Stellar Blade, then they would probably be cheering for the outfits that were originally in the game uncensored. It has nothing to do with standards or morals. It has everything to do with the fact that we're their political opponents and we like something. Again, myself, I'm pro-modesty, but I'm anti-censorship, especially stupid censorship, especially censorship that is effectively false advertising. And this game was largely marketed as uncensored, which caused a lot of people on our side to be excited for the game. And it was only then that these people had a problem with it. These people lead personal lives that directly contradict the puritanical views that they have about Stellar Blade. And that's because it's ideologically selective. They don't hold these views, they're just pretending that they do. They often frame the argument as shaming perverted men, and their arguments often come off as shaming all men. And that is a part of it, yes, that they do want to shame men, but the reality is they don't believe what they're saying. They're just pushing their ideology and using this as a means to an end. And when discussing these guys' puritanical nature, again, they have no problem with bare sex in Baldur's Gate 3, but somehow they have a problem with Eve in Stellar Blade having a little bit of cleavage showing. So it's nonsensical. That they're being completely dishonest. It's very clear. Now, as a result of starting a petition to free Stellar Blade and having other tangible steps to try to, reach out to the developers and get these things changed, Grums, who already was disliked for some of the other things going on in today's day and age, he's been repeatedly attacked.
This person named Tone Man, so I think the FBI should definitely investigate Tone Man, although I'm sure the FBI would probably agree with Tone Man, let's be real. Still, Tone Man puts out a tweet, says 20K to anyone that makes his dipshit disappear. Obviously, it could be a troll, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of these out there.
People have actually been joking about killing him or putting a bounty out on him. Now, of course, most of these you can kind of take with a grain of salt. Like, are these people actually going to act upon it? No, of course not. They're just talking shit. But joking about putting a hit out on somebody is still pretty shitty. And many of these people who are making these jokes, they have large audiences. And sometimes when you have a large audience and you say something that's not serious, sometimes people take it serious. Again, do I think Grums is actually in danger of someone attacking him? No, I don't think that for a second. But again, that's not really the point. The point is that these people hate him, and they do. They might joke about offing him, but they do actually want him dead. Now, you also have a Magic the Gathering and Warhammer artist, Paul Scott Canavan. He's saying that the people he disagrees with, he wants to track down and string up the loved ones. He's saying he wants to track track down and string up the loved ones of people he disagrees with. And this isn't something that he, mistakenly let slip. This is something that he publicly posted himself online on Twitter. Again, these people are deranged. They are not sane. It's not acceptable for you to disagree with them. If you disagree with them, you're seen as evil and you must be taken out. Now, the reality is no one actually believes like he's going to go out there and do something. Obviously, I can't say what on YouTube. No one believes that he's actually going to do anything, and he's just being an angry, whiny little baby on Twitter. But if something happened to you as his ideological opponent, he would probably cheer it on. Again, these people oftentimes are too pathetic and weak to actually do anything, which is good. No one wants them to do anything, of course. But they are the type of people to publicly cheer that sort of thing on. And they either A, don't realize how destructive their hyperbole can be, or B, even worse, they do know how destructive that hyperbole can be, and they're putting that call out there to their fans and the people who support them to do something. Another thing that was really interesting is someone decided, because they got so mad at people like us, someone decided to actually fill out a false FBI report, which is a crime against Grums, and they even referenced Az from Heels vs. Babyface and Asmongold in it too. But the guy fully recorded himself and uploaded the video to YouTube for everyone to see that he was just actively committing a crime, because he got so upset that our side was just pointing out the stupid things that like gaming journalists were doing and companies like Sweet Baby Inc. were doing.
Yeah, we're gonna go with all of it. Mentally tarded, morbidly obese. Yeah, motherfucker. You are not going to be safe from any of this, motherfucker. This will be on your permanent record.
Here's a helpful little tip to any viewer of this video. Don't film yourself committing a crime, and if you do film it, don't upload it to YouTube as a public YouTube video for everybody to see. I'm not a legal expert, so maybe you need to consult a legal expert and get some actual legal advice, but personally I feel like that's a bad idea. If I had to guess, filming yourself committing a crime and then posting it on the internet for everyone to see, that sounds like a bad idea. And to show you how badly people wanted to attack Stellar Blade, the moment the embargo dropped, people were trying to say that there was a reference to the N-word. If this wasn't YouTube, I would just say it. The Hard R shop. It was nothing more than just a reused asset being put in a unfortunate spot.
How all the journalists had the same racist concerns within 30 minutes of going live with each other for the review embargo.
But of course, Sony had to immediately come out and say that they were going to patch it out. This is the type of hard-hitting journalism that was happening on the game the moment the embargo lifted. Because this game was heralded as uncensored, raw, uncut, unfiltered, basically everything that the wokies stand against, they had to attack it from the beginning. And again, it definitely wasn't coordinated, because the mainstream journalists in gaming all released their articles basically right next to each other. There certainly wasn't a memo that got passed around. So we recently had the Helldivers 2 controversy, where PlayStation was effectively forcing PC players to have a PlayStation Network account. While it is easy to make a PlayStation account, that's not the point. It kind of opened up a whole other can of worms. PlayStation is not available in all countries. In fact, there's quite a few where it's not available. However, Steam is available. So it caused issues there because there was a conflict. Also, many PC players just don't want PlayStation accounts. There's a reason they don't have a PlayStation console. They want nothing to do with Sony. And in fact, Sony's been hacked many times, so they have security concerns about their data and information as well. Over the course of a weekend, there was basically a whole shitstorm. Sony tried to force that on the players. They tried to sneak it in on a Friday so people wouldn't notice. People noticed. The fans revolted, downvoted the game massively on Steam, everyone shit themselves, and eventually the decision was reversed. Now, many people heralded this as a victory, and it is a small victory. However, it's not a major victory like some people are making it out to be, because Sony is still going to do this with their other games. A week from the day of recording this video, Sony is releasing Ghost of Tsushima on PC, the director's cut, and guess what they're doing? They are still forcing you to have a PlayStation account with the game. Steam also quietly delisted the game in the countries where you can't have a PlayStation account. Helldivers 2 was the test run, and sure, it wasn't an optimal test run for Sony, but they're gonna keep doing just that. They're gonna keep forcing you to have a PlayStation account in order to play their games on PC. This is something we cannot get around unless we as gamers fight back. With Helldivers as well, some of their mods and community managers were a little bit weird. It's a very interesting situation. So first you had Spitz, who basically said, you know, if you don't like it, GTFO, refund and leave, when Helldivers 2 announced that they were gonna do all of those changes. Now Spitz quickly backtracked and apologized for that and said that, hey, he didn't realize how big of a deal it was. It was probably that he realized he stepped in the shit and then had to backtrack really quickly, but hey, he apologized. And after all of that, Spitz came out and basically told people, hey, downvote the game, request refunds, and hopefully this will send a message and it will change. Now, as a community manager, what he said makes sense, and it did work. Of course, everyone did go after the refunds and dislike the game on Steam. The reviews rapidly changed over the course of about 24 hours. And then, of course, over the weekend, everything changed, and Sony reversed their decision. So what Spitz said did go ahead and work. But as someone who's employed with the company, of course, you can't really tell people to do that. In any job, if you said, hey, dislike us online and tell people that we suck and request your money back, you're probably gonna get let go, even if it is the right thing to do. Now, of course, anyone with common sense knows that that's probably just gonna be the case, even if they were correct in that instance. Now, normally we would just leave it at that and say, you know what, Spitz made a mistake, rebounded, and yeah, Spitz was fired, but Spitz did the right thing. But it seems like there's more to the story, unfortunately. So Grumps came out and tweeted, I think Spitz in the end actually ended up helping Helldivers in a big way, and that they should have fired Baskinator instead for never briefing and prepping her team for something she knew about for months. She let him walk right into the fire and then fired him. So Grumps was tweeting out his support for Spitz. And then Spitz didn't accept that and came back with this response. Katie has never been anything short of a phenomenal boss. She's had my back through everything and was the reason I got the job at all. I don't want your support. Look, even if you don't like Grums or, you know, whatever you feel, there's no reason for you to come out and say, I don't want your support. People can disagree with me on anything, but if they come to the channel, if they watch me, if they donate, go ahead. I'm happy to have that support. Saying I don't want your support is just such a weird hill to die on. I don't know why Spitz thought this was a good idea. It seems really fucking stupid to me, but some people just seem to struggle with thinking rationally. To me, this just makes no sense. I don't know why you would even do something like that. Now, I think I said Spitz was a community manager. I meant mod. Spitz was a mod. Now, because he was doing such great reporting on the Helldivers situation, one of the moderators actually falsely accused Grums of sexual assault. No evidence, of course, but it's worth adding to this section of the video. Now again, this comes on top of people doxing Grums and openly advocating for his death, and somehow people call Grums the harasser. Grums should be flattered though, because his bounty actually went up to 50,000 at one point, so these people, they really don't like him. Nick Calandra is also suing Grums after allegedly participating and cheering on some of these actions in his Discord server, and then Grums calling him out for it. Grums even offered to just have both of them shake hands, apologize, and walk away, but of course Nick declined. Nick also posted defamatory information about Grums, which of course was just a troll that he had fallen for. He didn't verify that any of the information was actually, you know, real. So again, to appease the Alphabet Mafia, Pokemon Go actually released an update where they changed the avatars in their app. And of course, the women, they made less curvy and more ambiguous.
Attractive characters weren't inclusive enough, and that needed to change. Now character models are so misshapen they don't fit most of the in-game clothing anymore.
Again, they do this sort of thing to appease the trans people. Now, if I say why the trans people need to be appeased with this, YouTube will take this video down.
It might have something to do with the fact that they'll never look like something else.
Maybe. Now, oftentimes with these avatars, what they do is they take the women's avatars and they mash their boobs into their body. They basically just flatten them down like that. They also take the hips and narrow them. They take the shoulders and widen them. And they also square out the jaw a little bit more. This is an intentional effort to make everything more ambiguous. And of course, the fans weren't happy because 1, the characters were ugly, and 2, it messed up the outfits in the game. And with the outfits, many people paid money for these outfits, so of course they're upset because they don't look like what they look like when they bought them. Nowadays in the news, and related to everything, is Xbox failing as well. Now, Xbox went on a acquisition spree since about 2019, where they spent $68 billion for Activision Blizzard, which of course had that huge court case as a result, and they even spent about $7.5 billion for Bethesda. And as many of you are aware, they have been moving towards Games Pass. They've been getting away from just the sales of games altogether and moving towards Games Pass. And of course, if you play Xbox games on PC, or if you have an Xbox console and the game is on Games Pass, there's no reason to pay full price for it, especially if you already have the subscription, of course. Now, that's almost $80 billion that they spent just on acquisition of those two companies. They have acquired many more, and Games Pass earns less than $4 billion a year. So you could see very quickly how that would not be a sustainable business model. Obviously, they do sell other things, and they have other things that bring them revenue, but it's not making up for that massive gap. Now, even in 2021, you had people calling this out, saying that Games Pass would need to hit like 500 million subscribers in order to be profitable, and it seems like that turned out to be true. Now, as a result of losing money, they started shutting down some studios, and it seems clear that they have a plan to shut down more. Now, they shut down Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Games, and Roundhouse Studios. Now, Arcane Austin made Redfall, so I would say they deserve to be shut down because that game was a fucking shit pile, and really they're just known for Dishonored. Tango Gameworks is actually known for Hi-Fi Rush and The Evil Within. Now, I know The Evil Within did okay, and Hi-Fi Rush was actually fairly well reviewed. I didn't play it myself, but everyone I know who did play it reviewed it very highly. The other two studios I really don't care about. Now, Razorfist actually had a good tweet about this where he said the injustice here is that none of these studios made Fallout 76 or Starfield. Yeah, if you were gonna shut down any studio, it should be the ones that made those fucking massive turds. But again, at least Redfall got punished, so there is that. It also doesn't help that Xbox has white-hating people who are very high up in their organization. Their global head of marketing was openly bashing white people. Now we have Kelly here. She said, raise your hand if you're not a white man and you buy video games. No hate to white dudes, it's just another day in the gaming industry that minorities have to fight to prove they exist. We know you exist. We can't stop hearing about it. And of course she thinks she's clever enough to get away with it because she adds the no hate to white dudes. These are the types of things that drag your company down. You make bad financial investments and then you hire the wrong people. And this is a consistent pattern with many of these companies. They have such pernicious progressive groupthink that they can't but help but hire those people who are also their peers. They suffer from such progressive groupthink that they can't help but hire people who are just like them. They could never hire an outsider. And again, this isn't a one-off. Xbox is hiring companies like Sweet Baby Inc. They're forcing this ESG compliance all throughout the company. It's not one bad consultant that they hired. It's not one bad person that they hired to be their head of global marketing. This is a top-down decision, and it infests the entire company. You even have ex-devs reporting that DEI is ruining these games and these studio cultures. And remember how I said that this goes all the way up to the federal government and includes things like your tax dollars? Well, the Department of Homeland Security is actually protecting companies like Sweet Baby Inc. The Department of Homeland Security effectively wanted gamers to denounce Gamergate too. Again, your tax dollars hard at work. As we discussed earlier, Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. Many people, myself included, were hoping that this would mean that the quality of their games would get better. Unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend getting your hopes up. It appears that they are doubling and tripling down on the DEI initiatives in their games. They already spend more time putting pride flags in Call of Duty than making the games actually playable. They are going to push DEI and Games Pass as hard as they possibly can. The bonuses and reviews that employees get will depend on how hard they push DEI. DEI officers will be placed on every dev team. They are forcing the inclusion of consultancy agencies like Sweet Baby Inc. in erasing straight white male characters. Even their president, Sarah Bond, is a retarded diversity hire who couldn't explain why some studios were shut down over others.
I think one of of the things that was most upsetting both to Xbox gamers and to employees is that, one of the shuttered studios in particular just created a hit game, did really well on Game Pass in terms of engagement, and won a ton of awards. Shouldn't succeeding in that way ensure the future of a studio?
One of the things I really love about the games industry is it's a creative art form. And it means that the situation and what success is for each game and studio is also really unique. Like there's no one size fits all to it for us. And so we look at each studio, each game team, and we look at a whole variety of factors when we're faced with sort of making decisions and trade-offs like that. But it all comes back to our long-term commitment to the games we create, the devices we build, the services, and ensuring that we're setting ourselves up to be able to deliver on those promises.
Another recent story that ties into all of this DEI nonsense is the reveals of the upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, Assassin's Creed Shadows does star a black man samurai in Japan. The guy Yasuke was a real guy, but he was never actually a samurai. He was basically just a sword carrier. IGN attempted and failed to push the narrative that Yasuke was a samurai. This, of course, basically pissed off all of Japan. Japan hasn't been as receptive to the woke mind virus and doesn't have the same ESG money flowing into all aspects of their media. They also have a reverence for their history. It's all escalated to Japan basically just trying to cancel the game. It's weird that they'd be upset that some fat white chick is trying to rewrite their history. One user even stated that this was the first time that they understood what cultural appropriation was. I also love how the narrative quickly went from Yasuke is a samurai, and if you disagree, you're racist, to, well, Assassin's Creed was never historically accurate and you're racist if you want it to be. Almost immediately. The shifting of the goalposts was astounding. It's also really funny that Ubisoft made the music hip-hop theme because the protagonist is black. Some of this hypocrisy was actually pointed out by Madame Savvy on the AC Reddit, and of course she was immediately banned. They're also banning people for saying that they want an Asian man as the protagonist. By the way, some of the Sweet Baby Inc. founders were actually former Ubisoft employees. Just an interesting fact. A small side story that is too funny not to include is the CD Projekt Red and their inclusive menstrual leave. We're proud to receive the Diversity Chapter Award for our menstrual leave benefit in the campaign of Innovative Approach to Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in Business, which honors organizations showcasing outstanding commitment to fostering an inclusive workplace. This category is chosen by internet users, so thank you to everyone who voted for us. This is just so retarded that it's actually comical. Notice how many of these DEI initiatives in gaming, they don't talk about their actual game. Their message matters more. Now we get to COVID and the influence of COVID and investors like BlackRock over the video game industry, for example. During COVID, everything as far as most of the industries were on decline, mainly because people were, staying home, they weren't working, so they didn't have, quite as much money in a lot of cases as normal, except for the stimuluses. So in America, you had people staying home and they had the stimulus money, which oftentimes went towards gaming. So the gaming industry as a whole, especially in the United States, was really, really on the rise. When many other industries were failing, gaming in the US during COVID was doing extremely well. And this attracted a lot of attention from investment firms like BlackRock, like Vanguard, etc. And these companies, I guess they figured that it would continue and it wasn't a bubble generated by COVID, but this compelled them to invest a lot of money. And these companies, and I'm mainly talking about BlackRock specifically, these companies have a history of compelling behavior. They essentially say, hey, if you want our money, you have to do these things. And these things are often ESG, DEI compliance. You either comply or you don't get the money.
At BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors. 54% of the incoming class are women. What we are doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay?
We're doing the same thing.
And so it's just, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race, or just any way you want to say the composition of your team.
And as a result, again, if you want that BlackRock money, one thing that they make sure that you have to do to get it is you have to bring in these outside consultancy agencies like Sweet Baby Inc. And then, of course, these consultants use mafioso tactics to make sure that you use their services and make sure that you take their changes. You know, it's a nice company there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. That's sort of the tactics and the agenda that they push. BlackRock is so large that they're often called the fourth branch of the government and even manages funds in the Federal Reserve. As you can imagine, BlackRock can swing quite a lot of weight around when it comes to compelling behavior through financial incentives.
The extremely close ties to the state of large investment management companies like BlackRock further confirmed the suspicions that this kind of cronyist scam is definitely happening in backroom deals, with the relationship being so strong that BlackRock is often called a fourth branch of the United States government. A big one being how BlackRock is regularly hired to manage the assets of the Federal Reserve, effectively rendering them too big to fail, effectively ensuring that they will always have funds available at the backup of the Fed money printer go burr. These same firms then have a lobbying and revolving door relationship with the state, where they can partake in cronyism where they lobby for rules that directly benefit their investment strategy. And because they manage these assets, they also have direct command over how ESG funds are allocated, which then controls the general market, of which, again, gaming is just a small part. The government then passes regulations and grants subsidies based on the ESG metrics, making it a self-fulfilling prophecy, which makes it look like ESG investments are a legitimate component of the free market to people who aren't paying full attention. You can think of it as them using private companies as a proxy for them to circumvent the Constitution. And then, of course, these laws directly control the market as well. While this is all an oversimplification, it is in a nutshell how the ESG scam operates. It is a deeply authoritarian system that tries to masquerade itself as a legitimate free market investment system when in fact it is just a scheme to push the ideas of the cathedral onto the general populace without people noticing.
On top of DEI and BlackRock's ESG requirements, you also have Bridge, benchmarking race, inclusion, and diversity in global engagement. This is essentially a rebranding of the DEI policies because of how unpopular they are. People are starting to recognize the terms DEI and ESG. Bridge essentially exists to hide those terms and make DEI inescapable. Many of the CEOs of the largest companies in the world, including companies involved in the gaming space, have pledged to take part in this. They want to include things like dynamic pricing to ensure that minorities pay less while straight white men pay more. Now, the government is actually targeting straight white male gamers as terrorist threats and extremists. As I said before, your tax dollars at work. Your tax dollars fund this via federal grants that go to NGOs that say they're stopping terrorism, but really they have their own agendas and they just really don't like straight white men. Now, this video wouldn't be possible without the many tremendous people who spent a lot of time working directly on this or being attacked or just overall reporting on all of this information that's coming out. People like Side Scrollers, Short Fat Otaku, 21 Kiloton, Geeks and Gamers, Melanie Mac, Vera Dark, Cabrutus, Grums, Critical Drinker, It's a Gundam, Yellow Flash, Razor Fist. There's too many people that I can possibly go through and name them all, so if I did leave someone out who is doing a really good job with this, definitely shout them out in the comments below. Again, this video wouldn't be possible without the tremendous work that these people are doing, and they deserve all the credit in the world. I'm just someone who is kind of compiling all this information. So hopefully after going through all of this information, you can see how the original Gamergate is tied to the events of today. Hopefully you also realize how they'll do anything to push the message onto the masses, even if the masses doesn't want it. I also hope you realize just how terrible of people that most of these people are. Again, I tried to keep the video concise and from getting too schizophrenic, but I think I failed just due to the sheer amount of information that we had to go over. Hopefully either way you enjoyed the video. Again, consider supporting my locals and please subscribe and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy to see more from me in the future.